Welcome again from Green Cell to all those who have joined us this evening. This is one of our webinars. It's a Q&A webinar that we are conducting today on a topic that we have previously conducted several webinars on: composting, gardening, and being summer. We are right in the middle of summer, and all of us garden enthusiasts have started growing our own gardens, food gardens, flower gardens. And we've decided that this is a good hybrid of a webinar where we can have more of an interactive session where y'all can come back and ask the speaker questions of the problems that you're actually facing on the ground while y'all are doing all the things that we've been asked to do and learned how to do over the last few webinars. So we're just waiting for a few more people to get started, and let us know if you have any other ideas in which we can get speakers to talk, any other topics that would be of interest to you all. And Green Cell would be more than happy to help organize such webinars for you all that will be beneficial to all and all. Our main quest is actually to help everyone go green, build an awareness in reducing our footprint. So at this point, what we are trying to do is we do a lot of different projects and activities. We're involved with helping set up a butterfly garden in the Ottermill Nature Reserve. That's one of our most recent projects which we're doing with the youth. And we conduct webinars on, we have the next month's webinar, which is in July, is on recycling. So do mark your calendars and join us there as well. And I'm just looking at the time, it's 7:02 now. And given that this is just a 45-minute webinar we are doing today, I do not want to stand between me and the speaker for today and the topic more than anything else. All those who have joined, I'm sure Uma Shashikant is no stranger to you all. I'm sure most of us have attended her previous webinars with us and followed her on all her posts on Facebook and other places, social media, where she so willingly shares the knowledge that she has and helps guide all of us in our learning of gardening and growing our own vegetables and becoming self-sufficient. That's the mantra that she, I think, professes, is that if we all can become self-sufficient in our food garden, that would help in a myriad ways in all of us going green and reducing our eco footprint here. So the format for today is that Uma will be talking on primarily three broad topics on the issues that we all face while we manage our summer gardens, conceptually on watering, and then on pest control, and then on the diseases that might come up in the plants that you have in the garden. And so while she talks the first 10, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, the plan is that if you have any questions, please put them down in the chat window. We'll all be muted so that we can clearly hear her. But after 20 minutes, after she explains what she needs to do, we'll have an open forum where we will unmute all the attendees, and y'all are more than welcome to ask her the questions and have it's going to be a discussion. Engaging dialogue with Uma to find out the answers to all the issues that we face. So Uma, let me know if I've missed anything else, or you can take it away at this point.
All right. Thanks, Geeta. And welcome to all the participants who have come in today. It's a workday evening, and I'm grateful that you took the time to attend this webinar. What we're going to talk today are topics that are very close to my heart, because the answers, they have the most questions. People have the most questions on topics of pests, on topics of plant diseases, and on watering. In the limited experience I have helping people garden, most questions come under these heads, and these topics become very, very important in a summer garden. And my answers are typically a little unconventional. So I always feel that it's good to have a forum in which I can explain why I answer the way I do. So you're able to kind of take a more commonsensical, more holistic view of how to manage these problems. So since we are going to spend more than half the time, allocated time today on questions, let me just quickly go over some important points on the three topics that we're going to talk about. The first one is the watering, the second one is pests, and the third one is diseases. They are interlinked, so we may not have a watertight division of these topics. So we start with watering. I mean, a summer garden is most, what do you say, most deprived of water. That seems to be one of the bigger problems for a summer garden because of the heat and the general high temperatures that are in the microclimate where the plants are growing, that tends to dry up the soil and therefore makes the plant vulnerable, weak in a sense. So typically the gardeners therefore believe that standing in the garden with their hose is the thing to do. While the families are complaining about the rising water bill. So that's typically the issue. And every time people find a plant slightly wilted, they believe that the plant needs water. Whereas the truth is that your plant primarily needs shade from the afternoon sun. So it's very important to make sure that the plant's root areas, as part of your gardening strategy, you must make sure that the plant's roots are in the dark and are cool. So the primary way to ensure the plant's health or the plant's ability to even take water to a large extent depends on this idea, and which is why mulching is your primary tool in a summer garden. By now, you should have mulched your plants. If you haven't done so, I urge you to do it. Please do not use wood chip mulch. Wood chip will come in the way of, it'll interfere with the growth of the plant. And use wood chips where you have established perennial bushes or trees or evergreen bushes. You can definitely use wood chip mulch under those areas. But if you're looking at your annual vegetable garden, you're looking at your tomatoes, your okras, your brinjals, your peppers, etc., it's better to use crushed leaves as your mulch, because these will provide very high quality protection, harvest rainwater very efficiently for you, and also keep the soil very cool. So your first strategy for keeping the soil cool is mulching. And second, and more important, it's part of the design, is to make sure that your garden is shaded in the afternoon. Typically, after about the garden is going to thrive if it receives morning sun and afternoon shade. So when I talk of afternoon, I'm talking of something like the midday. So right now we have the sun coming up at around 6:30 and setting at around 9. Let's, for the sake of convenience, keep it as 8:30. So we have about 14 hours of sun. So which means around 1:30 is the midpoint. So let's say about 2 o'clock. So after 2 o'clock, the sun is likely to be much harsher than it was before. So the second half of the a light day. So if your plant gets shade at the time, it's going to help the plant immensely. So if you go to your garden in the evening and find that the plant has wilted, it's not as if the plant has not received enough water. It is just that it has been received too much of heat. It needs shade more than it needs water. So it's important in your garden design. I also find that many begin their garden design with felling trees. I mean, the strategy is wrong for two reasons. One, it deprives your garden of the benefits of rainwater harvesting. Three reasons, actually. Two, it stops birds, which are natural predators, from coming into your garden. Birds have no perches. If there are no perches, birds won't come in. And three, it also deprives your garden of much needed shade. So if you have already cut those trees and if your garden is already receiving too much of afternoon sun, you can adopt planting strategies like putting very tall plants like okras, corn, sunflowers, very plants that grow really tall. Or you can even grow any of these tall grasses, or you can grow, for example, what do you say, crops like quinoa or jowar or ragi or any of these, food crops, just with the intention of providing shade. So make sure that your garden receives an adequate amount of shade. There are also other shade strategies. For example, let's say that you haven't planted these and you don't have the trees and it's a little late and we're already in the middle of summer. What you can do is to plant ground covers to make sure that the root area of your plants are completely shaded. You have excellent ground covers that will grow beautifully now. All your gourds, the winter gourd, the pumpkin, your mango cucumber, watermelon, all the Asian gourds, sorakai. I know that a lot of people grow bottle gourd in Atlanta. Instead of, and they grow about 30 to 40 feet. The plants are very voracious growers. They have huge leaves, and we all know that we harvest much more than we can consume. So a few plants touching the soil, a few fruits touching the soil and rotting is something that we can put up with, but do plant these as covers so that the plant root areas are kept cool. So if you protected the soil from going too dry, it will help your summer garden immensely. Your primary goal in the summer garden should be to secure the soil temperature and ensure that your root areas are dark and the root areas are cool. So every strategy that you can adopt, and please do not put plastic. There are many people who, as a weed cover, try to cover their ground with black plastic. You can't do worse because black as a color is going to attract the light, and the plastic is also going to increase the heat in the root zone. So if you're growing plants like moringa and gongura, which love the heat, they may still tolerate that amount of root zone heat, but otherwise this amount of root zone heat may not be very conducive for many plants. As I talk about pests, I will tell you a little more about this. Then the third point I want to talk to you about watering is that do not sprinkle water with your hose pipes every day morning or every day afternoon. It hurts the plants in two ways. One, in the summer, it's the root that needs the water. So if you water the leaves, what happens is that your plants become very prone to fungal infections. So you must keep the leaves dry as much as you can. So if you must sprinkle water, you can do it in the morning. If you're using your sprinkler, please set the sprinkler for 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m., not later than that, so that there is enough time for the water to completely dry out during the day, so that by the time it is sundown, having an overnight situation of wet soil, wet foliage, and in the middle of summer is a good recipe for fungal diseases. So you want the leaves to be dry. It's the root that needs the water, and the root needs a gentle flow of water, nothing harsh. So holding the hose by your thumb and directing it to the plant is absolutely wrong watering strategy. Leave the hose without those contraptions. Leave the hose near the plant so that it is able to soak. Or if your hose has a soaker hose option, or if you have set up a drip irrigation setup where water is gently going to your plants, that would be ideal. A plant will need about an inch of water in a week. That's the food requirement for the plant. So instead of watering every day, if you water deeply and if you water twice a week, and if you've mulched your soil, that should be adequate amount of watering. Your watering needs go up dramatically if you have not mulched, because the water is quickly evaporated into both by the wind and the sun. And the watering is not deep enough, so the roots have not gone deep. So the plant's yields, the plant's ability to face pests, they all become less. I mean, as I said, these topics spill into one another. When you're talking of pests, you will notice that if you walk around in your garden, there are some plants that seem to be attracting a lot of pests, while some of the plants nearby are not attracting that many pests. The only principle to remember in pest control in a garden is that a strong plant is your biggest defense against pests. If you have a healthy plant, very likely no pests will come to the plant. So the presence of pests is actually an indication of stress. The plant is stressed in some manner. And you will, it doesn't come as a surprise to me, but maybe to some of you, it will come as a surprise. One of the most common causes of stress amongst plants is overwatering. Several gardening enthusiasts believe that they must keep watering the plants. So they stress the plant out by overwatering, and that leads to a lot of pests. So if you have sucking pests like mealybugs, if you have aphids on the plant, or if you generally find that a plant is kind of overtaken by pests, one of the first questions you want to ask is, are you watering the plant morning and evening every day? Not the right thing to do. Water infrequently, water deeply, water gently, water the roots, cover and mulch to protect the water that you have, moisture that you've created. A simple test is to kind of push the mulch aside and poke the soil with your finger. You can also get the water meter, which is a very efficient tool to kind of poke and see whether the soil is dry or moist or wet. Okay, you can use that too. Or you can just poke your finger, very efficient water meter. The tip of your finger returns moist. The plant doesn't need water. So please do not be under the mistaken notion, because the plant's ability to take on nutrition is severely compromised if it is standing in wet feet. So do not overwater the plants. Try and water them early in the morning. If you can water in the evening too, because when particularly plants in the ground, you can water them in the evening too, because what happens is the plant doesn't lose the water over a long period of time. However, it's very important that your plants are well spaced, your garden is well aired, and your garden is well mulched for you to water in the evening. If you have a crowded setup of plants very close to one another and fairly thick foliage falling over one another, and the plants and the soil not mulched, and then you water in the evening, you are kind of opening yourself to fungal disease. So at this point, if there are any questions on watering, I will take those questions. You can use sprinklers. One last point, which I must mention, if you're growing a container garden, and particularly if you're growing in those black bags,
grow bags,
grow bags, which are air pruners, then you're doomed to water twice a day, because those will just dry up. They will completely dry up. So if that's your choice container, for whatever reason, you will have to water twice a day, or you must have drip irrigation, because they will, it's designed to let air in. So the entire medium will go dry in a few hours. So, and if you have containers, you anyway have to water every day, because the ability of containers to keep water is limited. There also, you have to be careful in terms of how much water it will take, but mulching helps in container garden as well. Yeah. And if there are any questions on watering, I'll take them at this time.
Yeah, we don't see any questions on the chat window. So if any of the attendees have a question, please unmute yourselves and just ask the question so that Uma can help answer it. And she is going to be talking.
I have a question.
Yes.
When we water with the hose at the base of the plant, how much should be the force of the water? Because it takes a long time for the hose, if you put it on the lowest. So correct. Is there a particular thing we should aim for?
Don't dislodge the roots. That's what I'm trying to say. Keep it at a level where if you keep it low, it is good. It doesn't have to be very, very low, but don't make it so forceful that, it kind of dislodge the soil and dislodge the roots, So keep it as gentle as possible. It's also a good idea to do other tasks in the garden while you're watering. You don't have to just do the watering. So while you're just moving the hose from one plant to another, you can do your harvesting, you can do your weeding, you can do, fastening and tying up the plants and generally supervising what's going on. So try to club other garden tasks with your watering task so that it doesn't become a very lengthy chore.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think you mentioned about this black bag and the containers. My question is regarding, I am trying to, I have plants in raised bed in a wooden box. So how does it work in that? I
It
don't
is
know.
fine. It is fine. You just use whatever watering principles I mentioned will apply perfectly to the raised bed. The advantage with the raised bed is that the water will drain off. So you don't have to worry about water stagnation. So raised bed is a very good idea to keep moisture, to keep nutrition, to provide earth-like, ground-like conditions for plants to grow while providing advantages of a very large container in which you're able to contain the plants. So there's absolutely nothing for you to worry as far as raised beds go. So soaking up the plants, watering infrequently and watering deeply. I think all the principles we discussed about watering will hold good for a raised bed.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
There's one more question on this mulching, Uma.
Yes.
When you talked of mulching the garden and to help retain the moisture, can we just use the compost that we have and lay it as a thick layer?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely, Geeta. Thank you for bringing that up. If you are making compost at home, you should slowly graduate to doing it as a gardener. And we at Green Cell are very, very happy to help you become a composting champion. So if you are harvesting compost, what you will find is that the compost is not like store-bought, finely sieved, even output. That's because you are adding different elements to it. So there are some leaves there are some stems there are some tinier branches there, or there is stuff that is not completely decomposed. So if you picked up that compost, but ideally you would add compost sometime in April. It's a little too late to add compost to the soil. But having said that, when you add compost, instead of spending time and energy in sieving the compost, if you harvested this uneven compost and spread it out in your plant beds, you will serve both purposes, because the compost itself with multiple waterings will get soaked into the soil, while the rough elements will continue to serve as the mulch. And the biggest advantage of putting compost on the top is that it's your biggest protection against slugs and snails, because this uneven texture of the compost will keep the top layer completely dry, and you won't have slugs and snails.
Okay, thank you.
So it helps, but you don't overdo the compost. So I would suggest that you put the compost and also do a little bit of leaf mulching, because if you put more than, like, say, an inch of compost on your beds, you are over fertilizing. That can also be a cause of stress. Most of your sucking pests, so if you find mealybugs, aphids, all kind of sucking pests that are attacking the leaves of the plant, it is a clear sign that your plant is over nitrogenized. Yeah, that you've added too much fertilizer. Yeah.
Okay, Uma, I have one question here.
Yes.
So I'm a little new to gardening, and I haven't saved enough of leaf mulch from last fall. So what is my next option other than leaf? If I want,
just go out there and ask friends. Atlanta is filled with leaf mulch. I know I'm sounding so audacious when I say this. I just drive around my neighborhood on trash collection day and just pick up those brown bags that neighbors have left and bring it back home. Yeah. So you don't have to do something as audacious, but there will be friends and others who have leaf in their backyard who are happy to get rid of it. You can ask around. I'm not able to provide an alternative to leaf mulch, which is as inexpensive. It's free, actually, which is free and extremely efficient, because you must remember that leaves will also have tremendous amount of trace mineral elements, because they've grown and absorbed the water, the nutrition from the soil, sun, and everything. So they also will offer much needed carbon, much needed trace minerals to your soil. So leaf will be my first choice. If you don't have leaf, for example, I mean, back in India, we don't have leaves, right? We don't have deciduous plants, so we don't have so much of dry leaves. So what we do in India is what I explained earlier in the session, which is called green mulching. So you're always growing a cover crop on the soil. You don't let soil exposed. It's a very important idea. So what you can do is you can grow, amaranthus and those kind of greens, grow some tinier plants at the base, or grow ground covers, grow some gourds or something, which will provide you a green cover, so it's a green mulch that you're using instead of a brown mulch. It works equally efficiently. In fact, in India, where we have tree planting drives, where we worry a lot about them drying off, In an extreme situation, we have even used stone mulch, anything to cover the soil kind of a situation. So you can use paper, you can use cardboard, you can use cloth. So all of these things have been used, but I think Atlanta is blessed in terms of a wide availability of leaves. First choice would be leaf, but you can pretty much use anything. Anything other than plastic is what I would recommend.
Sure. Thank you.
Uma, there's one, this Charu had a question, I think, because I thought I should.
Charu and Shilpa, I see them asking.
Yeah,
yes,
she had
Charu,
raised her
please go
hand.
on.
So Charu, do you have a question to ask Uma?
Yes. Hi, Uma. This is
Hi.
Charu.
Yes, Charu, good to see you here. Tell me.
So I have a question about watering the bulbs. How often do the bulbs need, like gladiolus, any kind of bulbs? Do they need
no watering? They are so filled with water already. They need no water.
They
They
don't
will do very well with just the rainwater. So you need to water them only if you think there is a dry spell of, let's say, 10 days, 7 to 10 days when there has been no rain at all. Then you might want to water them. But none of them need watering, actually. Most perennials will survive without additional doses of water. They'll be happy with just the rain. And if you're growing native plants, you should not be watering them. Native plants should only be growing. If you fertilize and water native plants, then you will make them invasive. So they are supposed to grow to the extent that the natural environment allows them to grow. So if you're growing a perennial sunflower, or you're growing a Mexican petunia, or you're growing a fall blooming clematis, you will not water or fertilize them. They have to live with whatever is the natural water available to them and grow to the extent that the natural environment allows them to grow.
Perfect. Thank you, Uma. Can I ask one more question, Geeta, if it's okay? I mean, I don't
quickly, we'll go to the next topic. Yeah.
It's not about the watering, it's about the taro root. I planted that and I have lots of leaves. So can I just harvest the leaves and the root will be fine? The bulb will be fine?
Okay, I'm letting you go this time, but this is like
that's
tangential to what we are discussing. Okay, Charu. So I will text you.
Thank you, Uma.
I'll text you, Charu. I'll text you the answer. Yeah. All right. Shilpa has a question. Shilpa, can I request you to just hold for a bit while I kind of, in the interest of time, quickly talk about the next section, come back to you. I'm sorry, Shilpa, about that. We were talking about pests, okay? Now, there is this whole idea of integrated pest management, which is what, if you like, you can go and check it out. It's called IPM, gives you fairly good insights. But I think a lot of gardening is about observation. So the first point that I will make to you is that garden is about life, okay? Your garden has food, and therefore it has the capability of sustaining several forms of life. So if you're a gardener and you do not like bugs, I am sorry, doesn't work that way. So there will be various life forms that will live in your garden. Please accept that these life forms have taken home there. It's their home too, and they found food. They're bringing up families there, and they are living there. And as long as they're not doing total damage to your crops, it is fine. It is fine for a few leaves to have some holes. It is fine for some bugs to eat a few leaves. It is okay for some caterpillars to make homes in some of your plants. It will all balance out. Okay, so the first rule in pest control is do not do anything unless you see collateral damage, unless you see that your yields are affected. For example, the vine borer, anybody who has grown zucchini knows the horror of getting the vine borer on the zucchini. And, whatever you try, I have tried every trick in the book, including late planting and, trying a foil around the thing and, a toilet paper roll on this thing, because the vine borer goes and lays eggs on the stem of the zucchini plant. Now, what you must remember here is that the female vine borer can lay 250 eggs in a single day. Do you have any chance of even winning over her? So just grow zucchini in batches. It's not going to affect your output for some time until she kind of takes over. So grow zucchinis, harvest them, grow them again. Zucchinis can be grown all the way from April to, you can sow your last batch even at September. It's a 50-day crop. So by mid-October, you will have another crop. So it's fine to kind of accept and live with it. I know that this sounds like, as I said earlier, some of these answers are unconventional, so kindly bear with me. But it is not necessary that every pest in your yard should be eradicated. There is a predator-prey cycle, which is in play. So if a pest comes in, its predator will soon come in, right? And there will be a balance. They will take care of one another and it'll be fine. There are, however, 3 or 4 practices that you can have which will control pests in your yard. Okay. The first one is what we call as multi-cropping. Multi-cropping is your biggest defense against pests. Now, as I said, they're all looking for food and they've come for food. So make it a little difficult for them to find their food. So don't grow tomato patch, okra patch, pepper patch. I want my garden to look pretty. Now, the problem is that our definition of pretty is so unnatural, so against principles of nature, growing plants in a straight line, wind will just gush through the plants and fall them all in one storm, one round of wind, your plants will all fall, right? So you don't want to create wind channels, you see? So you want to grow them in a way that they're grouped so that the plants leave out certain pheromones. Their leaves, one of the other reasons that you don't want to water the leaves. So when you water the leaves, as the water is evaporated during the day, the smells of the plant are all in the air, and that's enough for bugs to find the plant. So that's another reason why you don't want to water the leaf. There are people who say that the plants will think it is rain. No. If it's going to rain, it will become cloudy, temperatures will fall, humidity in the air will go up, and then it rains. So the plant will take it. You can't create all these microclimate changes, right? So don't stand there with a hose and think that the plant is thinking that it is raining. No, the plant is not thinking any such thing, okay? So you can't replicate that micro environment. So don't spray water on the plants. So the plants will release those pheromones. The point I was making about multi-cropping is this, that when you grow plants in a bunch, what happens is that the individual smells of plants are not available to the pests to be able to come and attack. Right? So multi-cropping is one of your biggest tools to keeping pests away. Grow flowers, vegetables together. It can all look very pretty. You can have a bed in which you're having a zucchini in a corner, a few pepper plants, potatoes in another corner, a few onions growing at the borders, and a little marigold and nasturtium standing at the edge. You can have them all together. They look pretty, and it's your biggest defense against pests. Okay, first one. Second one is that some of the pests reside in the soil. Okay, so crop rotation, not growing the same crop again and again. You don't have to overdo it. Okay, you don't have to kind of make it into such a obsession that you will not. Growing the same plant for 2 or 3 years in the same place is quite all right. Okay, but remember that the soil is getting depleted of the same nutrition year after year if you're growing the same plant again and again in the same place. So trying and doing winter gardening is your biggest defense against pests. So when you use the same plot in which you have grown okras and eggplants and peppers to grow cabbages and carrots and cauliflowers, by the time you are back to the summer to grow your summer vegetables, the rotation has already happened. Yeah. So multi-cropping, crop rotation, and then the microelements. Now, the third thing for you to remember is that you must have a sense of what kind of pests might come into your garden and how you will prepare for it. Okay. Now, snails and slugs, and as I said, most of the time the pests come because there is a certain microenvironment that is conducive to them. So there is, or the plant is stressed in a particular manner. So the pests are an indication, or they're a symptom of a problem rather than the problem itself. So if you have slugs and snails, then the water in your garden is not draining well. That's what it means. Your garden must get dry by evening. The top layer of your garden must be dry by evening. It will be moist inside. You just push the mulch a little bit, it'll be moist. But the top layer will have to remain dry. Now, if that does not happen, there can be times when you have excessive rains, so it'll be a temporary problem at the time. Or you can have a situation where the water is not draining and it's kind of stagnating. So your soil is moist, or as I said earlier, you're overwatering, you're putting too much water. So slugs and snails will come if the environment is moist. Mulching will usually solve the problem. If you're not able to solve it with that, you just take a kitchen towel, dip it into a flour solution. Any flour is fine, any little carb, potato starch or rice flour or maida or whatever. Dip the kitchen towel, make it into a clumpet, squeeze it out and leave it in the garden. So they'll be attracted to the sugars in the night. They will all get collected below this clumped up kitchen towel. Only one rule, they'll all disappear in the morning. So you have to go and pick it out when it is still dark. You'll find that most of the snails and slugs have got attracted to this little piece of kitchen rag that you have left. You can leave a cloth too. And you should be able to get rid of the slugs and snails in this manner. So there are several pests like this. So as I said, one way to look at the pest thing is to manage the environment and ask what is wrong. The other is to kind of have some tools to take care of them. But please hold back this urge to kill and squish and eradicate every bug that you see in your garden. They're part of the microenvironment. And it's important to remember another thing, that the pest that attacks the plant and the defenses of the plant are a synchronous action. So as the pests attack the plant develops the immunity to fight that pest, right? So if you keep attacking these pests with chemicals or with even what you believe are organic fertilizers like neem oil and other things, you are stopping the plant's process of immunity. So please don't do it unless there is a total damage that needs to be controlled. So one little hole, and don't go out there with a gun of neem pesticide and don't get into this practice of, I will spray a neem oil every week as a routine. You're just stopping the plant's immunity, progress with immunity and its ability to work with the microenvironment in which it finds itself, right? So try and keep an integrated view. Try and keep the view that the predator will appear. Keep trust in the fact that the predator will appear. The same thing is true for spider mites, for example. You find that leaves are all filled with white spots and there are spider mites. Okay. Spider mites come because you're overwatering. They're a clear sign that the soil is more moist than it should be. It's wet. Now, the pest control mechanism for spider mites is again a solution of any starch. So you can take an all-purpose flour, create a solution. You can add a little buttermilk to it for the irritant factor and just spray the plant completely. What happens is that the starch gets stuck to the leaves and the little spider mites will get stuck there and they will die. So that's your way to attack these spider mites. However, if you allow nature to take its course, centipedes will appear in your garden and they will completely eat up all your spider mites. And the problem will be solved if you stop overwatering. Yeah. So for every pest that you have, aphids, you just spray water. Aphids cannot find their way back to the plant. Okay. It's the simplest thing to do. And if there are aphids, it means you're putting too much nitrogen into the soil. Aphids are a clear sign that your soil is nitrogenized. It need not come from the fertilizer you're putting. It's quite possible that your beds are located at a place where the runoff from the lawn is landing up at your plant bed. So all the nitrogenous fertilizer you're applying to the lawn is getting washed into your plant beds, and that is leading to the problem of aphids. Yeah. Okay. So these are like the common pests. Okay. But apart from them, there are these cruel things like the tomato hornworm, leaf-footed bug, Japanese beetle. Now, these are invasive pests. Okay. These are pests that are very destructive. A leaf-footed bug will completely decimate your plant. Okay. A cucumber beetle, it'll just take over and kill. Every single cucumber you open, you will find the bug inside, and it is absolutely disgusting. These are pests that are invasive, that require control. Okay. So these are not pests that come because of some mistake that you have done. It's not because of your overwatering, underwatering your plant. Even a healthy plant, usually a healthy plant will resist them. Typically, a healthy plant will not have pests, but sometimes a plant may have too much foliage or might have too little sun or might be too close or so on. So there may be other stress factors that will get these, but all of these pests will have to be controlled One, either by having a natural predator. Now, natural predators for many of these are birds. So if you don't have perches in your garden, if you don't have watering stations in your garden, see, birds don't fly long distances without hiding or resting because they'll be hunted by hawks and eagles. Okay, so if a garden doesn't have places in which birds can flit and sit and move, so smaller growth, smaller bushes, smaller trees, 10 foot and smaller. See, small birds can't fly all the way to the top of your oaks. So your garden must have perches, places that even trellis, any of these structures that you keep, any of the garden decor that you keep, or maybe, the stakes that you keep for your plants, all of these are also perches. So make sure that your garden has enough perches. Birds are your primary predators of these very invasive bugs. So your garden must be bird friendly. But there is also another point, which is that the bird that will eat that particular bug may not visit your garden. They may not know that the food is available here. Unfortunately, they don't know. So you have to pick and throw. Much as and you need to do it very early. For example, as part of your gardening trip in the morning, when you're walking around the garden, look under the leaves for the cucumber beetle's eggs. Even if you see a bug, you see 1 or 2 leaves having holes, look behind the leaves to see if there are eggs, pinch those leaves and throw them. Control is your only way to manage these pests. So if you find a tomato hornworm, pick and throw. If you see a Japanese beetle, pick and throw. So systematically picking and throwing the Japanese beetles each day, every day for a week will bring it under control. And you pinch off those leaves which they are attacking, because those leaves are sending out pheromones. They're all sending out alarm signals. Oh my God, I'm getting attacked. And then the beetles are just hearing that and coming right there. So if you're seeing leaves that are affected, pinching and throwing off the leaves that are affected, looking for eggs, picking and throwing is how you want to manage this set of invasive pests. Pests like leaf-footed bugs and others. Okay. The third kind of things are the crawling animals. Rabbits and raccoons, moles, voles. They are not going to understand your multi-cropping, your healthy plants. They're just looking for food, and they are much more. They have a great facility of territory. They can run, they can come in, and they can, yes, they have natural predators, but we are super scared of their natural predator, the snake. Yeah. So if I tell you that, your garden must have a snake that comes in the evening, you're going to be petrified. Yeah. But that's your best defense. If you had an animal that will hunt, a cat, a wild tomcat that will hunt them, or a fox that is a fox, or any such wild animal that's living in your backyard. So all of these are scary propositions for all of us. So these pests will have to be tracked. They only understand territory. They don't understand anything else. They don't know to share food. So your rabbit that's coming into your garden is going to decimate the entire bean patch. He's not going to leave anything for you. They don't know to share food. And they're not kind animals. They're just looking for their food, right? So you have to fence. There is no way to stop these pests other than territory markings. So good quality fence, a good quality defense against your territories, making sure none of these coyote urine and other things work, okay? You can have some sensors and other things for deer, but typically having fences, creating the fear in the animal's mind that they will get trapped, these are things that will work. So that is as far as pest control is concerned. Please do not spray chemicals on your food. It's your family that is eating your food. So you're not in a contest. All harvest pictures distress me at some level. I know I sound horrible saying this because people love to see harvest pictures, but the harvest picture has no actionable. So it is work that was done 60 days ago. So there's nothing, you can just see it and say, wow, that's it. I think it's a sad thing to do, right? After a point. And you can't, and you feel a little envious. Oh my God. Okay. So don't make your gardening the objective of posting a harvest picture in which you're showing 30 bottle gourds. I pity your family. Yeah. So do not make that the objective of your gardening. Do not use pest control methods that will maximize your output. As long as you're having a self-sustaining garden, it's good. So a little food lost to pests is all right. Only if you have a completely totaling kind of an invasion, do you have to take action? And so that's broadly it about pest control. I think I'm majorly overshot the time. So I will take questions at this time. And I think the third topic of diseases might have to wait, I think, because it's already 7:45. So are there questions? I'm happy to take them. Shilpa, I'll take your questions first because you were there earlier.
Yeah, I think we can go back to Shilpa if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, Shilpa.
I'm sorry, I spoke very rapidly. I was trying to kind of, Geeta, was I kind of, that makes
No,
sense?
you were, you were completely on.
The speed was okay. I think number
absolutely
of minutes was really rapid.
Those were great.
I was furiously writing down notes, Uma.
All right, Shilpa, go on. Yeah. Please go on with your question.
Okay, if Shilpa is not able to unmute yourself, we'll wait on her while we answer another question.
Shilpa here.
Yes, okay. Shilpa, please go on.
Yeah. My question is, I have a jasmine plant in a plastic pot. So will that plastic, because of the sun, the temperature will, spoil its growth?
No, it's going to be quite okay. I have seen the size of pots here in America. I think it's quite all right. Like,
okay.
I'm sure this is one of these huge 10, 15 gallon kind of a pot, right? So you're going to be quite all right. Plastic is a fairly useful medium for growing plants, and plastic does quite all right. But you must remember that jasmine is not native to Atlanta, so it will have its problems. So it's not going to be one trouble-free plant that's going to kind of yield for you again and again. So it will pose a few problems, but it usually settles down. There are a lot of Indians growing jasmine here quite successfully. I think it settles down and grows quite well. It quite likes the Atlanta's summer. It doesn't like anything else. That's the thing.
And the second question about the jasmine plant itself, how can we get maximum flowers? Like, there are many leaves, but the buds and flowers are not as much as the...
I have to let pass that, Shilpa. It's not within the scope of what we are discussing today. I'm sorry to say that because of the time. Yeah. Archana, is there a question that you have?
Yes. I just have a very quick question. I know first you're going to say, why are you...
Go ahead.
On my brassicas, somehow they didn't grow, so they have tiny little broccoli, so I didn't pull them out. But I have tons and tons of caterpillars on the leaves, and they're just eating them away. Should I just remove them, or should I do anything?
Yeah, it's a question of time. Brassicas are winter crops.
Right.
So they will be absolutely decimated by, it's a question of timing. So please grow them again, start them in August, transplant them in early October, and please make them part of your winter garden, and you will see how beautifully your broccoli will yield early January. Make sure you plant them in October. Make sure that they are there in the ground latest by the end of October. So by Halloween, they should all be in the ground, and you will get. They love cold temperatures, and because they are growing, they are weak. They're not their strongest selves in these temperatures, hot soil. So pests are just getting them down. They're just telling you that you're not growing to the season.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions?
So leaf mulch, how much leaf mulch is good?
Okay. Yeah, about a minimum of about an inch. Okay. 2 inches is good. Because if you put too much, then you'll create a habitat. Okay, moles and voles will start coming and living. If you put 6 inches of leaf mulch, it is a beautiful habitat for insects to lay their eggs and for moles and voles to make homes. So don't overdo the mulch. I'm glad you asked that question. So about 2 inches is enough. If you don't have enough leaf mulch, even an inch is good, because you want it to only serve two purposes. One, you want it to kind of shield the soil from the harsh sun and provide the soil much needed shade, and also provide protection against drying up of the soil. And second, and most importantly, you want to harvest rainwater. So when you have mulch, rainwater falls gently on the mulch and the soil is able to absorb the rainwater very well. Whereas rainwater falling directly on the soil will compact the soil. It falls with such great force that it can kind of harden the soil completely. So if you want soft and fluffy soil, you need to have mulch on the top, and an inch will serve the purpose. 2 inches, great.
One more question.
Yes.
So if it's, I know you said spray it with water and they'll get dislodged. Uh, so is it also a good idea to cut the plant, maybe leave 6 inches or 8 inches and cut the plant and let it grow back again?
Yes, but plants will be quite distressed because they are in the middle of a growing and fruiting season. So trimming them now, trim them a little later. Trimming them now might not be a good idea. You can just the thing of adding mulch itself will bring down the aphids because the browns in the mulch will to some extent balance out the nitrogen in the soil. So you should be fine. I think cutting is itself not going to help unless you've addressed the root problem.
Okay, because I see them mainly on Manathakali and
yeah. Manathakali as a plant requires its roots to be completely dry. So
okay,
Manathakali should be in a place where the soil is not very rich and a place which you're not watering. It should just thrive on rainwater. So even the slightest amount of moisture in the roots will lead to Manathakali's roots will have to dry up completely between waterings. So if it remains in a moist environment, it will be overtaken by pests.
Sorry, last question. Cover crop, which is amaranth, like let's say I leave it and it is full of holes, like because
Correct.
grow it as trap plant
crop.
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yeah.
So now, once the holes are like it's filled with holes, let's say.
Yes.
Do I cut off the plants?
Yes. Yes. At some point, what happens is somewhere by mid-July, the new leaves will be without holes because the bugs that eat these plants would have gone away by mid-July. They would be gone. So you would get fresh leaves. So one, you could trim them and get better leaves, or you can sow again. Amaranth can be sown in batches all the way until September, mid-September. They yield in about 25 days. So you can keep sowing them. The August, obviously the crops that you sow from end July onwards do much, much better than the crops that you sow early. But yes, trimming is a good idea. At some point, if you observe, you will notice that at some point the new leaves are no longer attacked. So then the plant is ready to start yielding for you. For the benefit of others, there is a lot to talk about these things. There are plants called the trap plants. Amaranth is a very good trap plant. So when you're multi-cropping, you will also bring in some tender-leafed plants, which the pests will happily take on and leave the other plants in place. And a very important point, which I did not, Amaranth is one of those plants, and that's called the trap crop. A very important pest control mechanism, which I just forgot to mention. I mean, it's sacrilege, it's criminal that I did not mention it, is herbs. Filling your garden with aromatic plants is one of the great ways of pest control. For me, that works the best. That's how I don't have pests that total my plants. Okay, I don't have anything going out of control in my garden. And I think it's primarily not only because of multi-cropping and rotation, but also because I grow a large number of aromatic plants, onions, garlic, every herb. You may not eat them. You may not know what to do with the borax, but if you're growing it with your with borage, borage is a blue flowered herb. You may not use it at all in your cuisine, but if you grow it with the eggplants, it offers the best protection. Dill, basil, all of these aromatic plants offer fantastic protection. Make sure that you clip them off when they flower. Do not let them go to seed because they will take over your garden. So you have to keep pinching them off, particularly when they are flowering. You must pinch them off. The seeds are very inexpensive to buy, so don't keep trying to grow seeds in your garden because they will grow out of control. And another thing to do is you can grow herbs in pots. You can have about 20 or 30 pots in which you're growing catnip and basil and, all of these fragrant aromatics. And whenever you find that a plant is under attack, you can just take this pot and keep it next to the plant. You can have this rotating set of little pots of aromatic herbs that you're using all around the garden to kind of protect the plants, because they let out such a strong smell that the actual smells of the plant is camouflaged by the presence of these herbs. Sorry, yeah. Are there questions?
Uma,
I'm not sure about the questions,
why don't
Uma,
you
but
give us a quick rundown on diseases? So, because we can quickly cover
yeah,
it.
we can then wind out. We are already nudging 8 o'clock. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
no,
Why don't you give us a quick rundown on diseases, and then we'll close up the session.
All right, Lata. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I can't go back and say I had a discussion. As always, it's like a monologue. Okay. There's just a lot to say. Diseases. Summer gardens are very disease prone because of the combination of heat and moisture. Please be aware that this combination can create a whole lot of fungal diseases in your garden. So your only defense is air. Make sure your plants are well aired. That must be your primary summer strategy. How are you going to ensure this? There are 4 or 5 ways in which you will ensure this, and let me kind of quickly talk to you about it. Plants breathe from bottom up. Okay, from bottom, from where the roots are to the top. That's how they breathe. So the bottom 1/3 of your plant should ideally be clean, clear, empty. So don't allow bushy growth around the plant. Trim off, cut down the lower leaves of your tomato plants, cut down the lower leaves of your eggplants, cut down the lower leaves of your pepper plants. Make sure that a few inches of the plant from the ground up is allowed for aeration. Allow for space. Whenever you're sowing, keep the adult size of the plant in mind and allow for space. So if you find that plants are too close to one another, of course, we're well past the time when you can transplant, but you have to pull them off. So make sure that you have plants that are able to branch out and they are able to breathe well. Air is your biggest defense as protection against most summer diseases. If your plants are well aired, if your garden receives a good amount of breeze, which again depends on the trees. Yeah. So if your garden receives a good amount of breeze, your garden is going to be disease-free. One. Second thing is contact with soil. Make sure that your plants have lifted up. Now, I've seen a lot of people that grow tomatoes who don't have the heart to pull off the suckers. Now, the tomato plant can either grow more branches or it can grow more fruits. So you need to be sure what are you aiming for. You know, there are a lot of gardeners who just cannot pinch away the suckers. And they'll say, oh, I can grow the suckers. I don't know how many more tomato plants you need, right? So you need to remember that the tomato plant must stay off the ground to be protected from diseases. So it must be well staked. It must be well trimmed. It cannot have too many branches. You must control the suckers so that it's able to produce fruits. So make sure that your leaves are off the ground. Do not allow the leaves to touch the soil, because with the rain, when the soil splashes on the leaves, that can also cause a great number of diseases. That's the second thing. The third thing is that try not to keep your soil wet overnight if you don't have adequate amount of air. Okay, so that what we call as creating traps. So if you keep your plants too close to one another, if they're too close to one another and they're also wet, and there is also the heat during the day, that heat is trapped inside there, and then that will create diseases. So you need to be aware of where heat traps are there in your garden as you're walking around to make sure that your plants are drying out well and there are no heat traps. Okay, and the fourth thing for you to remember is that where you're sourcing your plants from and where you're getting. I mean, I find that a lot of enthusiastic gardeners are looking for free seeds, seed exchanges, plant exchanges. Don't do it. A good reader does not borrow books. Please buy your seeds. You should know where your seeds are coming from. Unless you have a close group of friends whose gardens you know of and you are able to trust them, please do not. I have found that in most of the seed exchanges, the seeds are coming from India. I do not know why you would want to grow seeds from India when you know that the climate there is so different, the microclimate there is so different from here. So if there are importers of seeds, and if they are able to give you the next generation of seeds which have grown here and which have become better because they have grown here and they have taken in the microclimate here. So the primary source of disease is the source of the plant, how the plant has been grown and where it has been grown. So do not buy plants, do not get seeds from unreliable sources. Yeah. Do not grow store-bought. People think that, oh, it's a good idea to just cut the store-bought stem and put it. You do not know the chemicals that have been sprayed. The potatoes that you get in the store have been sprayed with something to stop them from sprouting. So how do you expect that potato to come into your garden and sprout and be a healthy plant? So give this a thought. Grow plants that do not have diseases. Invest in good quality seeds. Several vendors of very good quality seeds. Try and get those. And if you're sharing seeds, share it with amongst a small group of trustworthy friends. And when you're buying plants from stores, make sure that you're getting it from nursery and try and desist the temptation to grow things free. I know that sounds very attractive, but from a disease control perspective, it can be dangerous. Several of these seeds are actually versions that have grown over there are multiple generation seeds, and they become stronger and stronger over generations, and they are good quality seeds. So that is it. As far as that's all the time we have to talk about diseases. Enjoy your summer garden and make sure that there is enough moisture, protection, mulching, air, and as I said, look for pests. Pests are at their peak in the summer. So learn integrated pest management, as it were, and tolerate some life in the garden. It's fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Uma, for this wonderful, wonderful session. It really, I think we had several questions and lots of our questions were answered. So we probably will have a couple of more sessions like this where we can have a more interactive session.
Some questions at the chat.
So what we will do for those questions in the chat, we will make it a point to post these questions and answers on our website, and also send a document with all the questions and answers that we have gone through today, as an attachment to all the registered attendees. So we normally send a thank you email, and with that, the question answers will be attached and sent. So for all those who we missed answering the questions, thank you so much for joining us today.
So I see so many
asking us these questions.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the one thing I wanted to add on to what Uma said is, with summer, and like you mentioned about gourds, especially the bottle gourds, if you have 30 bottle gourds and you don't know what to do with it, Green Cell has a program. We're partnering with with our program here called AG Plant to Row, where the extra produce that you have can be donated to food pantries. So do reach out to any of our volunteers and understand how this works and how you can contribute the excess produce. The last thing we want is any produce that is grown organically to get wasted. That's not the intention at all. So if you share it among your friends, that's great. But I'm sure with all the takeaways of today of live and let live as far as pests go, and managing the multi-cropping and the watering judiciously, we'll all have wonderful gardens and a wonderful produce to enjoy for the summer. Thank you very much again, and look forward to seeing you all in our July webinar on recycling that will be conducted by Pankaj.
Thank you all so much. I see so many familiar names, so many friends. I'm sorry I'm not able to say hello to everyone, but it's very, very, very heartening to see that so many of you took the time to come here today. Thank you so much. And please keep a bird-friendly garden. That's your biggest defense against pests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma.
Thanks, Uma. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Uma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank